In this video, I'm going to try and give an explanation on the use of a machine learning technique called k-means clustering. Machine learning is just let the machine do its thing because it is an iterative process that learns as it goes along and tries to optimize the result as it learns. So this is really just meant as a lightweight overview of k-means clustering ahead of a more detailed walkthrough of a spreadsheet I've built that is available for free from datamarketing.co.uk. Let's get started. Imagine you're running a survey on a bunch of teenagers to find out what they think about ice cream. There are those who really don't like ice cream, there are those who really love it, bordering on addicted to it, and there are those in the middle who are neither here nor there about it. Now, we want to design a web page where the content changes based on what we know about the user's attitude towards ice cream. Do we want to split them into 2 segments, or maybe 4? Imagine if we started to ask other age groups their attitude towards ice cream. Imagine quite quickly it becomes really impossible to see the wood for the trees. So how on earth do we decide the best way to group them so we can effectively target the content on the web page? That's where k-means clustering comes into it. It uses a mathematical formula to measure the distance between each piece of data and the center of each cluster. The number of clusters you want to use is called k. It does this by picking k start points from the dataset as a center or the mean or average of the cluster, and then measures which of the clusters is the one nearest to the data point. In this presentation, that's the shortest arrow, and here the green. It then moves the cluster to see if it can find a better fit each time, with a smaller distance between the data point and the centers of the new clusters. And it tries this again and again until all of the data points stay in the same cluster as the previous attempt, and then it stops. And that's the segments you'll target within your content plan, represented here by the blue cluster, the red cluster, and the green cluster. Now, you'll have noticed the maths behind k-means clustering requires it to know how many clusters you're planning on targeting before it can start looping through its measurements. And in the real world, that's really up to 2 things. The first is how much spread there is in your data, so how much the data points can vary from each other. This can be calculated using the same maths as is used when moving clusters, but starts off by assuming you want as many clusters as you have data points. In our survey, that means 31 respondents. The formula measures the distance between the individual data point and the center of all of the answers put together and plots the difference in descending order. These can then be plotted onto a chart which hopefully shows an obvious point at which the differences between one distance and the next smallest becomes increasingly marginal and the gradient of the curve flattens out. K is quite simply the number of points before the elbow bend. In this example, 3. The second point to consider from a marketing perspective, however, is how much can you really realistically manage with the resource you have. Sometimes it may be more practically to simply work with a smaller number of clusters. Sure, you'll be lumping some people in with others that the math suggests is suboptimal, but so is having to hire a lot more resource to produce the content and creative. There's also a flip side to this question. If you're working with a smaller data set, which just happens to have a large spread, then you could end up with almost as many clusters as you have data points. At that point, you really do have to question if clustering is worthwhile. And that's my explanation on k-means clustering. You may have noticed I skipped over the detail of the maths though, and that's because I've built a spreadsheet and accompanying video which goes into this detail. I've included a link to that video below. In the video, I'll also explain how to download the actual spreadsheet, which will let you start using k-means clustering for your segmentation. Thanks for watching, and until the next time, please feel free to leave your comments below.